What I'd like to do today, I'd like you to leave, my goal is that when you leave here, you have some practical, useful information you can use immediately, okay? And also longer term, but the practical, useful information is what I really want to give to you. And I've done this a couple times with a couple different groups. I have presentations, but I've just stopped doing them. They take me too long, I'll be honest. I've done them 100 times and I still spend 2 to 3 hours preparing and that kind of thing. And I started doing it this way instead. Just let's do it. The seminar, tell me what questions you have. What I'm going to do is try to boil a question down to a phrase, so we'll fit a little bit on it if we can. And I'll roughly try to group your questions as we go. I won't take them, I won't answer them as we go. I want to build a flip chart of questions and get a sense with you of what we're going to talk about then for the rest of the time. Okay, and we'd be able to add questions perhaps as we go. But who would like to, who's got a question?
I have a question.
Yes.
What's the best way you found to find a job?
Best way to find a job, okay? You mind if I use the word employment?
Career, whatever you want to use. Pole dancing, whatever you want to use.
Income, I don't want a
I like the word job. I like an organization chart. Nobody wants it anymore, and companies don't do it that way. You're looking for employment, okay? And you're also not out of work, because work is the exertion of mental or physical energy. If you wake up in the morning and you're breathing, you're working. Okay? That's how I look at it. And what you want is to trade some of your work, your exertion of physical or mental energy, for money or some kind of, payback. That's employment. And that covers jobs, part-time, temporary, consulting, the whole range of things. Okay, what else? Other question? Job?
I don't know how to phrase the question, but let me state that this current internet-based thing seems to be all keyword activated, putting your resume or CV together, and I don't really want to do what I used to do. So my keywords, it keeps bringing up all these old opportunities. So I really want to know, how do you get around that keyword thing so we can get to who I am now, because that's really a history, not really a current situation.
Keywords and resume.
Can I?
As a general, yes.
Yeah, so how to shape, for people who've had, decades of experience, how to shape yourself, how to shape the presentation of yourself so that you're not throwing out everything, but you're not carrying it around like baggage. You kind of build upon it, but go in a new direction.
Go in a new direction, okay? I'm going to call that career change. Can I label it that as a general topic? Yes.
It kind of goes along with this in that, how do you present yourself to be the person that the agency or organization wants when all they can see is who you were or what you did? How do I convince someone, yeah, I know that I was teaching French and Spanish, but I actually know a great deal about this information.
These last three are all the same thing.
Exactly.
Okay, we're going to cover them all, including that will be in here when we're talking.
So how effective is it to fill out the actually company resume field? So I really don't know how to phrase it, because if you could just put it into the correct question. Because a lot of companies, they just direct you to their website to fill out their application, and so you spend a lot of time filling out the same information in a lot of different portals. And you have to, have your own CV as well, and so it takes a lot of the time and energy. So how can we go around that?
Filling out applications, time consuming, yeah. What else, other questions?
I have one kind of related to that.
Yep.
I had struggled for years trying to rent out a room in my home. They called this life hacking now. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Life hacking?
Yes, life
No.
hacking. But I did it successfully by using a website and app called Turbo Tenant. So I'm curious if there is something for job seekers where you go to one portal where you put in all your information and then it like, sends it out to all these other websites, Linux, Matches, and brings, robots home for you.
All that websites to use.
Distributing websites or broadcasting websites, I don't know, whatever.
So Gar, everyone, there are two services that I ran across. One is called, I think, Resume Rabbit. A long time ago. So, yeah, if you put your information into that, be prepared to be like you'll get inundated with lots of different
opportunities.
things. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other one is ZipRecruiter. Is also another one that seems like it's aggregating opportunities.
An aggregator, that's what it is.
Aggregator.
Thank you.
Exactly.
And, okay, so I think I'm.
So ZipRecruiter and I believe Resume Rabbit, if it's still around. I haven't
Right, right.
looked at
I've
that.
had ZipRecruiter and it hasn't been
Okay.
successful.
Other questions? Other questions? Okay.
How much time should you devote to looking for jobs? Like, I feel like I'll go down internet rabbit holes, spend all this time, and then really not have anything to show. I mean, it's helpful in that I kind of honing in on what's interesting about a position, but any tips around?
How much time you spend on one thing, or how much you spend on your search in general?
Absolutely, both would be helpful.
Okay. But individual, I don't know, I'll just call them leads, you know,
That's a good one.
loosely.
Yeah.
Actually, they are leads. If you're looking at something that's a lead, it's going to be an interview, but I put it down, I'm working with somebody, how many leads do you have going, you know? How many active things, and so those count a lot. John?
I think for me, I found it tough to search for jobs rather than how can I create my own job, if you will. Because I find jobs very limited. And so I see, they'll use like 40% of my skills. And I can do it, but I want to be fully employed, you know? So how do you actually create or find a job that can encompass all of who one is versus just a small professional degree?
You can, but that's the short answer. I'll talk more about that later. Okay, wrong way to approach it.
Sure.
I get around age bias.
Age bias. Give me, what do you mean by that? Or you have an example of what you mean by that?
Well, for example, I'm starting out completely in a new field, and I'm way older than anybody else starting out in this field. I'm also coming around and volunteer, and I'm finding it a little bit difficult. People take me seriously as a kind of mid-entry level person because I'm.
Okay. Okay. Other questions? And as I said, we can raise others as we go.
I have a question. Handling objections from employers when you have not been employed full-time.
Okay. Explaining employment gaps? Is that?
Correct.
Am I accurate?
Perfect.
Okay. Let's start with these, because I filled up 2 flip charts, and we're right at 10:30, so that's a nice time to go with them, okay? Best way to find employment, through personal contacts, period, end of it. It always has been. It always has been. I'm going back to Neolithic and Paleolithic times. People in the tribe, people wanted to know, who can we trust? Who can we work with? There was a lot of gossip in tribes. I'm going back 100,000, tens of thousands of years here. This is who we are as human beings. And we find out from each other what we need to know. If you're in a bigger kingdom in the Neolithic era, okay, it's contacts. that's going to get you out of poverty or whatnot. Good work may help, but it's somebody noticing you and bringing you along. So the idea of context, I say this because I've seen articles that say, oh, networking is dead. That's an old concept. That's a 1990s concept. No, it's not. It's how we work as human beings. We help each other. And people, why does networking work? Because other people want to help other people. And if I help you by making a connection, I see it the way I see it is if I've helped you make a good connection and it's good for them, I've helped two people at the same time. That also is, and this is research has been done on this. I need to ask a favor. Could you just get me some water? Yeah, thank you. So it always has been, it still is. Now,
Can I be devil's advocate?
Here, pardon me?
Can I be devil's advocate?
Sure, please do. Yeah, and I want to open up, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you
I'll be
opinions.
short about it, but I
And
just,
some of you may not agree with, let me know if you don't, we'll talk it through.
well, I really don't agree with it, but I'm trying to embrace
Yeah.
that whole deal
Yeah.
because it never has worked for me. So even though I'm very outgoing and fun, and I know tons of people, and I hope I will be proved wrong this time. I really want to be proved wrong.
Okay.
Will be. I'm just putting it out there. Okay.
How many positions have you had?
I don't like to count them. It's been
You don't
a lot,
like to
my
count.
whole life.
All right.
This is the first time. Yeah. This is the
I
first
will
time.
tell you one of the things I will be telling with clients is fine. I go through their resumes and how you get this job, how you get, I ask them other questions about each job too to really get to know them.
Mhm.
But at the end, I want to know how have they been successful in the past, and most of the time, very often, there have been personal contacts involved, even if it was an ad or a referral or something like that. About a couple of years ago, I went to a conference locally here that was put on by executive search firms. We're on the other side of the coin. I was in outplacement. They put them in, we take them out. That's the difference I've explained between what's outplacement and what's recruitment. And one of the panel members in one of the programs said that they were very interested with this idea of personal contacts in terms of recruiting people. And so they wanted to know how many people were they hiring that came through personal contacts. When they interviewed their staff, they had a company come in and put this whole thing together, they found out that only 20% of the people who they had hired knew somebody in the firm before they were hired. However, because people put this note in a couple of times, they went back and asked another question, they found out that 80% of the people who were hired knew somebody in the firm by the time they were hired. They met somebody else through LinkedIn or something. Oh, I know that person, and they used to work there, they work there now. That's networking again. Networking to me is not, you see somebody and they have, here's the lead that you need. It's a process that you go through, you reach out to a lot of people, energy out, energy will come back. Am I answering your question?
Hey, I'm listening.
Okay.
It becomes a little bit
All right,
difficult.
best way to find employment. And so what are you going to say to them? Let me come to this because I'm going to link it back to this. Okay, how do you use this? How many of you have gone through career assessment tests? Do you do that here?
What exactly?
All right.
Define what you mean.
Yeah.
I'll name a couple. Some I like, some I don't like that much. The Campbell Interest and Skills Survey. It used to be called the Strong Campbell Interest Inventory. It's one of my favorites because they look at skills, okay, and say, what are your best skills, the things you do best, that you like to do most, the Campbell Interest and Skills Survey. Myers-Briggs, I'm not a fan. I won't go into why, that could be another conversation. But psychologists cutting people into four squares has been done since the Greeks. Okay, it's nice to work with, you can predict and you can put people into a box, but I don't like it that much. It also requires somebody who's knowledgeable in the instrument to explain to you what it needs. You don't need that with the Campbell. Okay, you can read it yourself and probably figure it out. The Berkman method, I'm certified in it, it's very complex, we use it for coaching more than other things. And then there's just sitting down and talking to somebody, which I do also when I first meet them. Sometimes I can get almost everything I need, and I say, what are you good at? In fact, here's what I'm going to ask you to do, everybody. Just write down, what are you good at that you like to do? anything that comes to mind. Write a couple things down. What are you good at that you like to do? I don't care if it's in the work world or otherwise. Okay, everybody have a couple things? Just turn to somebody sitting next to you, or behind you, or, oh my goodness, here we go. Does this thing take off? I need a seatbelt here. Talk to somebody next to you or behind you about anything you want to talk about that you wrote, just for a minute or so.
I have been doing research on housing because I peer review housing is not buying it. And I have to think about those housing dollars, about where we should go, different companies. This is at the end of they're beginning to do this now in academic research now use artificial intelligence methods. So they know how complicated it is every day. I can do this. But you my guess. Well, I don't yeah, you're in DC. Okay. In terms of listeners and what report from
Want to see what you try to do? Just call. I'm not going to make a list or anything. It's all about writing. By the way, if you're good at writing, I always ask, are you good at editing?
Thank you.
Good at editing, or are you good at proofreading? Because I find a lot of writers, only a few editors, and not many proofreaders. But I've put all three. What else? Anything. Talking. I would rather have listening.
But she's more of a teacher.
Okay, and in fact, talking is one of the biggest mistakes people make in interviews when they're looking for jobs. Listening is what you should be doing way more of and way better. And you should know what to listen for before you do it. You should research the organization. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But listening is critically important, I think. You know, speaking, yes, if that's part of the kind of position you're looking for, but just talking, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Well, I really like organizing events, so
Okay.
it can be like miscellaneous or business events and
Okay.
everything. And I also like, I really don't enjoy being like a routine in my employment. I
Okay.
really like
Flexibility.
Exactly. For it to be
Spontaneity.
definitely.
So you're looking for a company that's got that quality
Yeah,
as
to be
well.
active and to learn and
All
have
right,
coaching
all right,
sessions.
all right.
Like
Now,
that.
here's what you do with all of these things that you're starting to say. I do it as if I'm a counselor. I write them down. The words that come out, what you said you do well that you want to do. And I get a list of all those things that you do well. We're already starting to get this. Say a couple more, just to throw a few more out here. What you do well that you like to do.
I
Yes?
like to read. I like to read.
Read.
Even reader and find out new topic.
Reading and research. Yeah, research, okay? And you analyze this stuff, and what you say, I don't, like, research and analysis might be further beyond what you're doing and want to do, but I think that's good, okay? What else? Yes,
Data analysis.
data analysis.
Just studying information and noticing any trends
Okay,
that may glean
okay.
from it. And then
Studying information
they make
trends.
reports or
Okay.
conclusions from that.
All right,
I like mentoring.
mentoring, good, okay?
I wrote down being in competitive situations.
Competitive, excellent, can be excellent for the right kind of positions that require that, and that's the other thing to be thinking about. But first off, I'm not really thinking about what the positions are that anybody's going to go for when I start with somebody. I want to know, what do you do well that you like to do? Because if I can get a good list of those things, that's what we want to build your resume around and your approach around. Then we want to figure out, where will that fit? Who will it fit with? There's somebody out there for it, okay? You know how many skills are transferable? All of them. All of them. In my lifetime, it's stunning. And there are a couple that everybody's kind of looking for, okay? Communication, interpersonal skills, that sort of thing, the softer skills.
Yeah.
Those everybody's looking
So can we
for.
go on that for a little bit?
Yes,
Because I
yes.
think that is so incredibly important, the soft skills. But I find in my conversations, that's still really a challenge to sell. Like, people still want you to swim in your own lane and say, okay, well, that's all great. You're Paula, you're a mentor. You're a great, speaker. You're a great team builder. All of these things, and I can back all of that up,
Right.
with data and everything. But it's still like, what are you gonna do for me here? And I find that as important as the soft skills are, it is really hard to find an organization that's going to hire you based on soft skills.
Oh, they won't.
Yeah.
If they would, I wouldn't want to work for them. There might be exceptions, but some weird organizations.
Right.
You're raising kind of another. Let me see if I address the question,
Yeah.
just going through some of these, and not bring it back
Yeah.
afterwards again. All right. I've been in resume writing. I've written articles on resumes. I've critiqued resumes for thousands of people. I majored in advertising and journalism. One, you learn to write the truth, and the other, you learn to write to convince people of things to do or things to think. Okay? Not that you're not dealing with the truth in that. Different ways of writing. Your resume is an advertisement. Okay? Now, I will never forget one advertising class where the professor was standing in front of the room with a big book, Vogue or something like that, one of those big magazines with a lot of pages in it. And he said, okay, and as he's standing there, he's just letting the pages flip through his finger, And he says, so you spent all this time interviewing your client and finding out what they want, and doing focus groups, and coming up with drawings and ideas and themes and writing, and then coordinating again, and then you searched which organization to place it in and how to spend your money, click. He says, how much time do you think you have for your reader to look at your ad? Flip. Now, that was back in the 1960s. It has nothing to do with computers. Okay? This is not something that came about because of computers. It's how we read. It's what we do. We look very, very quickly. Where are people usually going to look first on your resume?
Top down.
At the top. Why? Because it's at the top. You take all your keywords, and instead of writing a resume, if you're having trouble with a resume, you want to make a career change, move to something else, let's start with where you want to go and not so much where you've been. Write a 4x6 card up for yourself. I've told people that if you're having trouble with a resume, it probably isn't the resume, it's probably the assessment. You often, and some of you may need more formal assessment, okay? To get option, not to identify what you should be doing, but to give you more details about what tools you have in your kit and which ones do you want to use and apply. Okay? It's not a boom, this is it, I'm going to tell you exactly who you are and what you're going to do. This is a process. We're dealing with human beings. So getting them down on a 4x6 card, okay? As a writer, I learned to spend hours on the opening sentence if need be to something. If you don't catch their attention in your opening sentence, it's not going to go any further. Okay, and by the way, if computers scan, they're still going to be looking for keywords. Now, I would try to build, let me come in just a second. I would try to build that 4x6 card into the keyword statement for your resume, but we've got to use a little bit of judgment and flexibility here sometimes. It's not just going to be everything you wrote and that's just going to go up top. But that's where I would start. And if you don't have a future directed section to your resume, all right, resume, name, address, phone, contact, or you could put it some way, but just have it up here wherever you're going to have it on the top. And then I very often try to come up with, well, let's just put the future directed part. About, actually 5 lines. Anything over 5 lines in a piece of writing that tends to be a little long, a little thick, people are less likely to look at it. I'm talking about readability and capturing the person's attention now, okay? Because often you spend all these hours and days and everything on your resume, nobody else gives a damn. You know, they want to know, are you going to work with me? Can I make money on this? Will this work out? But I mean, it's not like they're sitting there hoping they're going to have another resume to read. And a study that was done just a few years ago of professionals who review resumes asked how long on average. What they did, there was an experiment they did. They selected 40, and some were professionals from companies, recruiters, some were professional executive search firms, okay? And they gave them literally piles of resumes. They did it with piles because it was easier to do the study than putting it all online. But what they did then was put eye-tracking devices on the 40 people, and they had them go through the resumes. And what they were looking for was how much time, on average, did they spend on each resume, and where did the eyes go? How much time on average do you think those professionals spend on each resume?
5 seconds.
Thank you. 6 seconds, 6.2 or 3 or something like that seconds, okay? And I thought, oh, that's really fast. And then I thought, wait a minute, now I've looked at resumes all my life. In 6 seconds, if you know what you're looking for as the employer, man, you can get a lot of information in 6 seconds. If nothing else, you get a picture of what does a whole resume look like. What I want is readability in a resume. I don't want a lot of tricks. I don't want a lot of fancy. We usually recommend Arial type. It's not the only type, but it's a good, clean, basic type. Whatever type you use, good, clean, basic, easy to read. This all comes right out of advertising. Very often I will have 5 lines of copy up here and then say something like skills, because I'll have a couple of short sentences in here, do international development work for companies involved in something or other, and another couple sentences or phrases, but then I'll put skills with a colon and just put a list of key skills right under here, because I want to catch the reader's attention. And if they find stuff they're looking for here, they'll look at the rest. If they don't, the rest doesn't really matter. Okay? 6 seconds. The other thing they wanted to know is where do the eyes go? Where do the eyes go first? Almost half the time was spent up here. In that summary statement up top. Again, I recommend 5, no more than 6 lines long. Write in telegraph style. Remember telegraph, the original tweets? Think about it. Telegraphs was the original tweet. Arrive early, stop. Everything okay, stop. We'll write as soon as possible. Didn't say call, we didn't have phones. But same thing. Quick, short, tight, you know, edit it down. And again, I'm looking for the keywords, but I want to start with your keywords. And then you're going to do some research and find out where you can do. But I just want to go through on the resume first. Then you're going to put your past, okay? And these are titles, if you organizations and titles. And then at the bottom or the end of the second page, you're going to have additional information or your education. They spend about 3 seconds here. They glance quick at what your titles were. They glance at what your education is, 6 seconds. And then they decide, am I going to spend another 6 seconds on this resume? Am I going to put it into the yes pile? Am I going to put it in the maybe pile, or is it trash? And one woman at the State Department, when I gave one of these lectures years ago out there, she was a recruiter, and she said, honey, She said, I asked this, so let me just ask it all of you. A lot of you have done hiring, right? When you're going through a pile of resumes or a group of resumes, what do you do with them?
You have 2 piles.
You have 2 piles,
Yeah.
which are
Yes and no.
yes and no. Anybody do a yes, no, and maybe? I find it's usually 2 piles or 3 piles. This lady said in the State Department when I gave this, she says, I'm in recruiting. He says, I just want to verify. It's 3 words, I lost my train of thought.
The lady at the State Department was saying how she wants to verify, that's all she wants.
She wants to verify. Oh, she said, when I'm done, she said, there's only 1 pile in front of me. Everything else is in the garbage. And whether it physically is or not, it kind of psychologically is, you know?
Right.
So this stuff is very important. These things should be reflecting wherever possible the skills up here. All right? You select from your past examples. Maybe you didn't do a lot of it. I don't care. If you did some of it, you can say you did truthfully, put it down. I would never lie in a resume. So don't, anything I say here, don't take it as that. But this is the most important part, the part I work on the most. This is the hardest part very often. This can take days or hours, especially if we have to go through more assessment and we're not sure and refine it and bring it down. But then once we start getting this, go into, all right, search firms. I made a list. I have to ask again if I could. Some water. Would you please? Thank you. A little dry mouth here. These are the ones that I would suggest. LinkedIn. All right? Because that's what everybody's using for everything, and that's where you make your contacts with. And many recruiters are using and have been for some time. LinkedIn is a primary search source. They go there before anywhere else. They can be evaluating people who don't even know they're being evaluated. They could be looking at who their friends are, that those people know and that they know, and calling them and say, hey, you know Brenda? LinkedIn does workshops for recruiters on how to use LinkedIn to search. Not only that, their ads are among the best I've seen on television lately, okay? They are attracting a lot of people. I would be looking at LinkedIn. Career Builder, another one. I don't think it's as good as LinkedIn, but I'd be looking at it. I used to write for Career Builder way back when they first started. Dice for technical jobs. Idealist for nonprofit organizations. Google. Google has a service. You got to find it, okay? You got to go into. I don't have the steps written down here, but go into Google and look for job finding, okay? And try to get into the Google system, but they put something together that I think is going to be useful there. And ZipRecruiter I have down also. I'm not saying these are the only places to look, but they are certainly places that are good. But once I have an idea of what you want to be doing, then I'm going to start looking, in some of these search firms, or just Googling up, search firms in the international development area, search firm in the aerospace area, search firm in whatever you're looking for, and see who's around, and then go into some of their sites and start looking at them. I've been in sales all my life. I do this. Anytime I'm going to go call in somebody, I got about 5 pages here on 40 plus. Just because I wanted to know more. By the way, there was something that really impressed me in this. They talk about your founders, and why they founded it, and I love this. They wanted to, they realized, the founders, that a program combining training, education, and support led by and for unemployed people would work wonders. Led by and for unemployed people, I think, is dynamite, that whole concept. And you're doing it, and a lot of the things you said about socializing with each other and the fellowship of, John used a great term, fellowship of, I forgot what it was, but fellowship of community. Yeah, that I really like. Okay, so what I'm trying to address here is the keywords in your resume. Don't start with your past or even history. If you have one, fine. Start by answering the question, what do I do well that I like to do? Because all the assessment tools I talked about they're all designed to figure out what do you do well that you like to do. They do it different ways and to different degrees of success. And I, years ago, before I started using any instruments, I talked to a couple of psychologists. And I said, I have been working with people in the way I was taught to do it. The original firm I worked in, we had long, extensive interviews with people. They gave us some information on a few forms, a little bit, but it was our job to really interview and find out who they were and write their resume and that kind of thing. Lost my train of thought again. I have mild cognitive impairment. Okay, the first group I've ever told that to. I just found that out a few months ago. So every once in a while I lose my train of thought. Bring me back, if you would. That's the reasonable accommodation I need. All right.
A question for you.
Yeah.
So on a resume that's not so much looking chronologically, but looking at what you want to do, what you can do, what you want to do. Do you have any places to go where we would see good examples of that? Those are harder, like, if I wanted to write, if I wanted some help, if I wanted to see somebody else's type of writing that way.
We always worked individually with people on them, and we were telling them what to do and how to do it.
We got a suggestion right here.
I have a backdoor way
Yeah.
of looking at good LinkedIn profiles and resumes. Find people that do what Tom does. You know, they put on their expert resume writer. Go look at their recommendations. So you have, I'm connected to a guy named John Sattler. John Sattler has 10 recommendations from people who he's helped write their LinkedIn or resume. You then look at those individuals' profiles. I will say that I adopted, I borrowed some language from one of the people he helped that is a sales vice president. So it's free advice, basically. So find resume writers that are in your field. And it's amazing what you can get.
I thoroughly endorse
Thank
that.
you. So you're gonna be a writer, you find somebody that's excellent to do the write your resume.
Right, so go on LinkedIn and just put in a keyword search for resume writer.
Yeah.
You'll get hundreds, if not thousands of people, okay? Look at one of those or multiple individuals, and most everyone has, as part of their LinkedIn profile, or a lot of people do, especially if they're on their own, recommendations. So somebody has recommended their work. So the person that I'm describing, his name is John Sattler. Look him up, Sattler, John Sattler. So John has, say, 10 recommendations. One of his recommendations, I think the guy's name is Brian something or other. So I went and then looked at Brian's profile and was able to see what Brian paid John to do, which was essentially update his LinkedIn profile rather. And I want to say this guy also put his resume as a document. Now, what I'm describing, you do have to have, I think, access to the professional version of LinkedIn to be able to see people's profiles. But I'm not 100% sure, but I think you do in order to see some of this. But it's just an easy way to see what experts are doing without actually paying an expert.
Do you pay them when they do your resume?
Yes, if you went to one of these individuals, and I don't know, Tom can.
Caveat, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very good idea, I think, to look there. And a caveat, though, with professional resume writers, which I've been, many of them, especially now, tend to put out really long, complex resumes, what I think are long, complex resumes. On and on about a whole bunch of stuff, and they use 4 or 5 different typefaces. It's a beautiful piece of art, but it's pretty obvious it wasn't written by the individual. I'm looking for something simpler, cleaner, and I'll tell you where else I would go, right here in this group, and just work in small groups. What do you think? You all know how to read and what you're looking for, and you get good advice, and again, clean, simple, is way easier to do. This is a simple guideline I'm giving you, you know, keep it clean and simple. Short sentences and that sort of thing. All right. Good advice though on it. You write your whole search that way?
Say again?
Researching, you get a lead and you check it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I'm pretty good at finding different ways of doing things,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
You know, we talked about Paul is a good problem solver, but
Okay.
I can look at a situation
Okay.
and figure out how to do it differently. So that's one of my skills.
Yeah, I have a question. First, it says on the chart, it says keywords in what's the?
In a paragraph form, I probably said, let me just say,
Did you mean on the first page?
On the first page.
I think resume?
oh, keywords in resume.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because somebody was saying, all my keywords in the history don't go to what I want to do. Well, then you do this, what I suggested first, and figure out what you want to do. And get it. By the way, the 4x6 card is your script. It's not just your writing for your resume. That's what you got to get up here. So when you talk about yourself, okay? And again, career change. Once you've got that 4x6 card, I like to call it, because that's about how much space it takes up. Then you're ready to go network, because you can go or write to friends or send an email, say, hey, I've made a list of things I'm interested in and good at. Who do you know, or do you know anybody that might be interested in this? We're not identifying an industry, we're identifying skills and asking who do you know about them, but you start using that so that what you've written and what you're verbalizing are consistent and they're the same. All right? But you're then, once you've got this done, you're moving into the research phase. That's where I think you really should be researching companies, industries, contacts, recruiters. But until you get that resume done and you've got it mentally up here and you're satisfied with it, you're not ready to start going out and talking to people, because they're all going to say, do you have a resume? Yeah, I'm working on it, you know, and it'll put pressure on you. Okay. Does that help on the career change and on the, you know, identifying what you want, how you do something different? And by the way, once I have found out through my research what the companies are looking for, then I'm going to go back and look at this, and I'm going to look at this. Companies, plural. I'm going to look at half a dozen or 8 resume or job leads, perhaps, okay? And say, what are they looking for? And I'm looking for, what are they all looking for? What are the terms and phrases that they're using? And I'm going to then try to work that into this, which again becomes my script. Now I have a blending of where I have been in the past, because that's where these things usually come from, and where I want to be going. All right? Make sense? Am I? Yes.
And they also, you mentioned the Campbell Skill. It's like a website, Campbell Skill. I didn't catch the whole
Oh, the
thing.
Campbell Interest and Skills Survey.
Okay, survey. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know who to recommend to do it. But I like it because of the simplicity of it, and it breaks up the world of work into 7 major occupational groups, and then asks you a lot of questions about what you do well, or what you think you would do well if you did it, and what you like or enjoy doing. And then it blends those two, and it gives you responses. Which types of fields would you fit in based on what you claim you're good at and what you claim you're interested in doing? It's simple, it's clear, it's not a final answer to your question, but it's going to give you a direction to go in.
How long does that take? That's
30 minutes to
30
take
minutes?
the answer. It's not that long,
Okay,
and we
that's
can
good.
get the results. And the results, I think, are fairly self-explanatory. I find. Let me go on to the others so we get through it. Filling out applications. I'd be careful about doing much of that unless you've got a real specific reason why you're going to spend time on that particular application. I'd be using my networking first, and if I've identified somebody I'm interested in, then I really want to do some networking before perhaps I write the application. I also want to go into their website and become very familiar with who they are and what they do. Where do they have locations? And I'll tell you two of the most important pages I look at. If I'm going to go into an organization, one of the first pages I want is the mission, vision, and values page. Because I'm going to work that into my cover letter, my opening, in my conversation. Your organization really impresses me because of the position you take on whatever, or the mission of helping people to further develop themselves and be a help to others. It's the kind of thing I'm interested in. But I want to associate with what they've got. Some of that, again, might either go into possibly your resume if you're still working on it. But if you're going to have a cover letter, then definitely we want to use it for that, even if you're filling out. But the application is a very long time consuming process, and you don't want to be doing a lot of them because they're getting an awful lot of them. What I would rather do is see if I can network into the company. Because if I didn't look at the website, I wouldn't know that they had an application that they wanted me to fill out. I got, Naomi recommended that I call this person, and I called them up and said, Naomi Mercer recommended that I talk to you, and, what I do, whatever. But then if they say, after they talk to me, well, you need to fill out our application, fine, then I fill it out. If I had a working lead going, had more of a reason to. There are other reasons I might fill it out also, but I don't spend a lot of your time on that. How much time do I think you should be spending on your search? A lot of people do what I do, recommend, oh, that's a full-time thing, you're doing it all the time. I think you have to be sick to take that much rejection, doing it, 6, 7 days a week. 3 solid days a week. 4 or so, and then you do some other things that you want to do. Now, when you go into interviewing and you get into that phase, and especially if you've got multiple interviews going, you might then be working full time, But up until that time, now the key is that you have your day planned, what you're going to accomplish and what you're going to do, and how many contacts you're going to make. Especially if once you're through this part, what I basically want to know is how many people did you contact last week? How many people are you contacting next week? If they say none and none, there's no job search going on. That's why the job search isn't working. Period. Okay? When they're working on it, boom, they start reeling them off. I feel the energy coming up. I know I can guide them. Maybe if we can do it a little bit better, but they're already got the momentum going. That's what we need here. So that's what I would say on that. Yes.
How do you, once you figure out your assessment and what your true skills are and stuff like that, how do you find out where you want to work? What companies or stuff you want to work with?
That's, well, usually you have an idea, okay? So whatever idea you have, that's where I would start Googling.
Idea of a company?
What kind of company do you think you want to work with?
Probably not non-profit.
A non-profit.
Not non-profit, so what else would you?
Go to the Idealist. Go to the Idealist for nonprofits.
No, I said not a non-profit.
Not, you don't want to work with a
No,
nonprofit.
just a regular company.
A regular company, okay. Nonprofits are companies, but they're incorporated.
Right.
They're all companies, and they're all very much looking for more of the same thing. You know what? If you've got an experience in nonprofit, and this is true for others, you may not want to be doing or staying in the same field you were in, but if you're really good at it, I would add it to people that I try to be in touch with. Okay? Because if you're really running a good search, at the end of it, you don't just have a new job, you've got multiple offers. But to do that, you've got to be talking to a lot of people and following up a lot of leads and periodically following up and that sort of thing. But I'd be cautious about excluding an industry, and really there's 3 industry groups: nonprofit, for-profit, and government. So, and in this town, you eliminate the nonprofits, you've eliminated a lot of your potential market.
Oh, really?
Sure, yeah.
Not to mention that if you diversify your search, as a lead in a nonprofit could flip you into
Turn into a
the
referral
government
to
or the
somebody.
for-profit sector, so it's just like, yeah.
Everybody you meet, who else should I talk to? Should
Strength
be
and
a
diversity.
standard
No.
question you're asking and see if you can work through it. Yeah,
Can I share something?
yes.
I just want to share something about applications, my own personal experience, and maybe there might be someone that can help. in my mind, I was looking for a job, but like you said, if you don't have any leads from the last week or have any from the coming week, you're not really looking for a job. And I think there's a certain amount of fear or analysis paralysis or whatever. So yeah, I don't want to have to spend my whole day filling out applications, so I don't fill out any. And so, you know, I just want to say for anyone else who might have been there where I'm at, some days the goal is get one done and complete and get it done. And then you realize it ain't no huge mountain, and you can take one step at a time. You don't have to conquer this thing all at once, but you do got to take one step a day. And that's actually enough to get you moving, because a lot of this stuff is because we're stuck in a certain place, and we're fearful because it's a new situation. You know, and I'm saying, no, take one step, just one.
That's another reason I recommend don't work on your search full time. Have other things to do. Volunteer for something. Your church, your community, help your mom. There's a million things. Go rake the leaves. You know what I mean? Get outside. In fact, 3 things I wrote this before for my closing. Who's the next step? Assessment, CISS. Okay, I forgot it's, I don't have it there. Was there another question? Yeah.
Well, I can just add to what John was saying. I think that the key thing is for all of us to be here, and we were saying volunteer, you know, if your job, the first thing you said, or your employment's going to come through your network, then the key thing to do is build the network. And so that can come from volunteering or whatever, and you're meeting new people, because if you're just sitting at home filling out applications, nothing's going to come from that. But what's going to come from something is coming to things like this, meeting people. You know, Lynn and I see each other now outside of this, and that's, I think, where it's all about, is growing that network, and that will come from all of the other things that you do, whether it's volunteering or whatever.
You are all doing exactly the right thing by being here with each other and for each other. That's one of the most valuable resources that you have, is right here in this room.
Because you can sit at home all day and tweak your resume.
Yeah, no.
And do LinkedIn. I mean, I spent hours,
Yeah.
you know, you just get lost. Like you were saying, you just drill down and the whole day's gone. And that serves no purpose.
Yes.
Well, they're just saying that we have to be with human beings now in business. I just got this book, and what they're saying is it's our brain.
Yeah.
That if you don't talk to human beings in real time, is your brain going up because you have left, right, and center, rather than just on the right? All day long, all night long, and you sleep 4 to 6 hours a night rather than 7 to 9 hours. And are your brains going up as you get older? And that's what they're saying now, that we have to talk to human beings and network with human beings rather than just online, because then when we get back online, are we better online? Are we thinking better online?
What did you say about 46 hours or 6 to 8 hours? What did you say?
Most people sleep 4 to 6 hours a night.
Okay, and you're supposed to do what? Did you say
7 to 9 to have your brain go up. But your left, right, and center, which is much more creative and then very fast. And we have to have that to be in business. Business is telling me this now.
Yeah.
Are you going to get to, there were a couple more questions.
Yeah.
One I had in particular about the being on your own versus not being full-time, employed full-time.
Okay.
And just
Gaps.
Let's go to
Gaps.
okay.
Explaining the gaps in your resume.
Broadcasting
By the
website.
way, we can slash that off because Lynn actually made a great suggestion about Resume Rabbit, which I'll check out.
Yeah.
I've crossed out ZipRecruiter as a possibility for me. I just don't like that.
If you don't like it, don't use. That's the other thing. Check them out, look at them. If you don't like it or it doesn't fit,
I'm done with it.
but be familiar with
I
it.
have 2 things to ask you. You didn't say Indeed. What's wrong with Indeed?
I did say Indeed. That was the first one I said.
Oh, you did, but you didn't listen when you said it. Okay, I just want to make sure there was nothing.
Yes.
But
yes.
ZipRecruiter, I will say this, and maybe, you know, I'm speaking for myself, but maybe other people know how to insert better search
I apologize. I
engines.
didn't say Indeed. I meant to though.
Okay, thank you, because I pay attention. I
Yeah.
just like, I wondered, maybe you just didn't say it because for a
No,
reason.
I didn't write it down. for
Okay,
myself, so.
awesome. But ZipRecruiter, I was so excited about that because, you
Yeah.
know, they have good ads and they say, oh, you know, because I'm like, there's recruiters, you're going to get a job. And I've been on that thing and I put a lot of time and energy. And about putting your, what I did, which you can do applications like no other, you put your application on that site and then you
Yeah.
can apply to different jobs. So on some given days, I could do like 20 applications in a day,
Yeah.
right? But even, and some people say it's a numbers game, which I don't know if I agree or not agree, but let's say that, like, I believe in quality and not quantity. But on ZipRecruiter, you can do a whole bunch of stuff, but with everything I've done,
I've gotten a lot of recruiters calling me. That's good. And I've had a lot of interviews, but nothing has really panned out,
Okay.
which I find really weird.
So-
But I find it's more like blue collar jobs. I hate to say it like that. Maybe I put the wrong thing in. I don't know.
You're doing this by responding to things, and then they're calling you?
Yeah, like
Okay.
there'll be jobs on the thing, and I'll look
Yeah.
at my skill set, and I'll go, I can do this job, and it
I
fits me.
would.
And then they
I
call
would-
me.
I would work with you on what's going on in those interviews, because apparently that's where you're losing it. You're not losing it in getting to those companies. They are interested enough to call you back. So if I hear that somebody's getting interviews, but they're not getting hired, we start doing interview practice and going through interviews in more detail, because apparently something's happening in the interviews online, on phone or
I hate to
online.
say it, I hate to be like, and I'm very honest,
Yeah.
interviews are my strong suit. So,
Okay.
yeah, my
But
resume
you're
may
not
not so
winning.
great, but once I get an interview, I usually get a job. So,
You're
I
getting
don't know what's
interviews.
happening, yeah,
Those
I
phone
usually.
calls are interviews.
Oh, honey?
Those phone calls are interviews.
Okay, yeah.
That is an interview.
Okay, I understand that,
So
yeah, I'm
if
doing
you-
the phone
that's
too.
not, they're not inviting you back, I try to find out why or what, or.
Okay, so maybe we can talk about that.
That would take longer to do, too.
Okay.
than-
Got you, thank you.
Hi. When we met Tom the other day, he got the wheels rolling for me, or the wheels rolling in my head on some ideas. And one of the issues I've talked to the people that I worked with, the staff that I supervise, is that we've lost that personal touch. So what I started doing after speaking to Tom, I actually started going into LinkedIn and finding out who the supervisor was of that particular job that they were advertising. And I started finding their contact information. I started making direct calls to them. And I've actually gotten some calls back just saying, okay, I want to get some more questions, I wanted to ask some questions about the position, and at the same time show my interest, and then send my resume. It actually worked. I've got a call back for tomorrow, just from them saying, oh yeah, we remember seeing that, and she's actually calling me back tomorrow.
Excellent.
But that LinkedIn contact aspect was
Yeah.
really important, and just utilizing who's the supervisor, get your name out there, get that personal contact, and establish,
Yeah.
even if it's a quasi-relationship, where they're going to remember you and see the
Absolutely.
initiative.
Absolutely, and you never know which leads are going to pan out and which ones aren't, but that's very good doing that. Okay, let me hit these last few, and then we'll take any other questions if you have them. How much time work on our search? I talked about that, okay? It's 3.5 days a week-ish, but have other things to do. An exception is going to be when you get real, in the very beginning, you may spend more time doing assessment resumes, doing research and that kind of thing, but once you're getting out there, and you start getting calls and interviews, you're going to be busy. You're going to be busy almost, you could be busy full-time. And I am huge on research before interviews. You research the company, the people, and the job. What is the company or organization doing? Company means employer. I don't care if it's a government agency or if it's a nonprofit or for-profit. I use that term company for all of them. But what do they do? What are their value systems? Look at the hiring page, not just to look at what jobs they have open, although I want to look at that. That tells me something about where they're going, what they're doing, but also the paragraph or two about why we think we're a good employer. I want to use that in my letter and in my, see, but I'm going to find out as much as by the time I get in and know about them, I'm also going to have a lot of questions to ask them. And this answers something else that somebody else said here, okay? You don't want to be talking all the time in interviews. You want to be asking questions, smart questions that show that you've done some research. Usually questions especially about the position that you're being interviewed for. What's the most important 3 things you want accomplished? If I'm hired and I'm successful, what will I have accomplished at the end of, say, 3 months and at the end of a year? I've known of interviewers who go, good question. And they have to think about it. But they like good questions. I've had a lot of people hired, and we found out later one of the reasons was they asked good questions. Now, you're not going to dominate the meeting, but if you're just answering questions, you're not ready for the meeting. I'll tell you how I know if somebody's prepared for an interview. They call me up and they say, no, I've only got a few minutes. I'm going in this afternoon. I say, I don't have a lot of time to work with it. The question is, what questions do you have for them? If they're ready, they have good questions. I may not understand them all, but they do. You know, they've done the research, but if they say, no, I don't know how I got to work on that, they're not ready for the interview yet. Creating your own job. Well, you're really going to create your own employment. I'm going to go back to that because job technically, the way it's defined by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that's another reason I don't like the word, or try not to use it, it's too narrow, is that a job means a position that has benefits. If you are self-employed, you're not going to have benefits other than what you pay yourself, give yourself, so to speak, but you're not going to be counted. Okay, I've been in this town doing this work for decades. I technically am not employed. By the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I don't have a job. You see what I'm saying? I'm out now. They're starting to count that a little bit more, but that is a problem with the word job. It's that narrow box in an organization chart. That's not how employment is working anymore. It's way more fluid because employees want it and employers want it, both. So creating your own job. You start by figuring, here's what I suggest you do. Here's what I did. You write 2 pieces of paper after you've done your assessment, figure out what you want to do. One is a biography. You have a resume, now you need a biography. And your biography can be changed. I have a biography for the healthcare field. I've got one for the legal field. I've got one for the international development field. Where in the opening sentence or 2, I particularly mention that industry and my experience with it, you know? Mention the job, creating your own. Lost my train of thought.
So keep the paper, biography, keep the paper.
Oh, write a biography,
Yeah.
okay? Half a page, no more than that, don't make it too long. But the nice thing about biography is you can start and go anywhere you want. Resume, you got some guidelines you really need to kind of follow, but not with a bio, all right? Plus a bio shows a little bit more that you're a professional. The second piece of paper is a capability statement. Okay? And that might have 4 or 5 bullets on it. Meeting planning and facilitation. Research. Team building. Exercise. So whatever you're good at. Okay? A couple of things with 2 sentences or so, just a little explanation of what you do. Okay? Who you are, what you do. Now, the other thing that we did, this is back when folders mattered, they're becoming, but you know what? What you're writing here also can become your website. Okay? Very easily. If you don't have one, maybe you want to put a little 2-page one together or something, boom, you got it. Who you are or where you are.
I like the way you just said that. It's so simple, right? You said biography, capability statement.
Yeah.
And then you said who you are, what you do. Boom, done.
Yeah.
That's like the way life should be. Like you explained it so well. I think the woman do that. Boom, it's not a big deal.
Here's what we
It's the
did.
best thing you said today.
We went out and bought really nice folders. They're silver, they're kind of glossy coated. You open them up, they got, 2 flaps in them. We didn't put anything on them. They're classy. They cost about $1 each. Everybody, we didn't never broadcasted our stuff. We brought it or sent it to somebody individual. They got a nice folder. They opened it up, and there was the bio and what we do and anything else I wanted to put in. Articles that were relevant, other things we've done, depending on who they were. And we built our folder for each situation. And the other thing is your business is going to come from people you know and referrals, the same thing as the job because of the Neolithic, Paleolithic, who we are thing I talked about in the beginning. It's how things happen. And not only that, I have analyzed several different companies that I've worked for, including our own, and I've done this with clients we have helped to build their own practices. And that's another thing. You may not be building a company. You're probably building a practice. I had somebody ask me that once. When I started my company, he built one just like a really successful. And we talked a little bit after dinner. He said, let me ask you something, Tom. He said, do you want to build a business or a practice? I never thought of it that way. And I realized later, I set a meeting with my doctor and another one with my dentist to have lunch. And I said, you got to practice. You're good at it. What can you tell me? And I learned. But I realized my business is built on me and a few people around me. It's not because I got representatives here and here and here and that kind of thing. You're dealing with us, you're dealing with us. It's a practice. So practice is probably a word you may be looking for, all right? You could call it your business. And if you're gonna call it your business, you may wanna get incorporated. It gives you a lot more credibility, and my lawyer told me this when I first started my first company, and he did my incorporation papers. He said, "Now I'm gonna give you one piece of advice. I really want you to take this. He said, I want you to go open a bank account in the name of this company, and I want you to get a credit card in the name of this company. And every single thing you ever pay for that has to do with your company, you pay for with that credit card, and it gets registered in this bank account. Okay? Every penny that you ever get for anything you do in business goes into this account, so we don't mess with the IRS. He said, do not commingle your funds. If you commingle your funds, you lose the protection of the incorporation, which means limited liability. Your liability is limited to the investment you have in the company. And now you have a financial system. Boom, you know? And I got 2 credit cards in my pocket, one personal and one for business, and as I need them, I need them. But then you're gonna go to people that you know, let them know what you're doing. And I tell you what, you can say, hey, I've drafted a capability statement on bio, would you take a look at it? Would you give me your thoughts on it? That's another thing to be thinking of. And keep in mind this about networking too. When you really get into it, you really do. Very often you're helping other people as much or more than they're helping you. And there's a lot to be said for that. It gives you some self-esteem, if nothing else. But what goes around comes around. And it's not just a one-way thing. You're not just here asking. Age bias. I'm going to give you my standard answer on this. Don't do it. Don't be biased against young people. Okay? That's a problem we're having. We've always had young people. The problem is we didn't name the generations until about the 1980s or 90s when a couple people got together from Gallup and they did a study on what young people buy and old people buy and people in different groups, and they put together a book and they named generations for the first time based on buying habits. It's an advertising term, blah, blah, blah. But it's that mental set. You see, I deal with people of all ages. I always have. And I can do it. And when I go into a company, you got to check your own six a little bit, okay? That you're not projecting onto those young people. I'm not saying that they don't discriminate. I'll tell you another thing I really am against. I'm against naming of the generations. Because, in my opinion, it is discrimination, pure and simple. I'm in audiences with HR groups, okay, and they're all talking about, well, when you work with young people, you got to do this, and then with older people, and then women are like, you know, and when you hire them, and then with the men on the other hand, I said, whoa. I said, we were talking about, you know, blacks and whites, or men and women. You get up and walk out of here. It's discrimination. When you're discriminating against the millennials or whatever, as soon as you say those words, you're lumping the whole group into one negative statement. That is the definition of discrimination. So that's where my answer is to it, okay?
Tom.
Yes, I'm not saying you don't encounter this, but that's what life is about. If you're going to get the job with them, you're probably going to have to deal with it. That's something they're looking for. Can you get along with people?
So
yes.
I'm just taking some liberty here with my colleague. I think more what she's focusing on is the 40-plus thing. We know that we're out looking for work. Wherever it is, they want to hire younger, less salary people. I think that's more the question.
Wherever it is,
whatever
they
the
want to
labeling's
hire.
not that critical, but I'm saying we know that's reality in the workforce.
It is not. It is not, because there are older people getting jobs all over this town, all over this country. I have worked with them all my life. They get jobs at older. And your statement, no offense, but to say, when you use the term they, you got to check that statement right away. Because you say all over town, they want to hire younger people than something else. Well, I'm not saying there aren't companies and organizations like that, but those aren't the ones you want to work for. Not the ones you're going to get to work for. But if 40 plus didn't work, if people didn't get jobs, I don't think that we'd be here. The organization would have folded. The existence of the organization, I think, is evidence. I'm not saying it's not hard, but looking for employment has always been hard. But it's how we approach. I can't change all those young people or all those people in those companies. I can change the clients I'm working with and get them to go in with a different mindset about this. And by the way, if you go in and you really feel you're being discriminated against, that's something you should be looking for as an indicator, because you should be making a decision as well as they're making a decision. Do I want to work for them? And when they're interviewing you, I had a recruiter tell me once, he says, there's 3 questions. He says that especially senior executives are trying to get answered when they're interviewing somebody. Can the person do the job? Will the person do the job? Do I want to work with the person?
Right.
That's what they're looking for. And you should know what you're looking for. You know? What do they need? Can I provide it? Do I want to work with them? And what do they need is the key thing that you need to be trying to find out in the interview. Because after the interview, and I'm going to stop, I'll just hit employment group gaps and then I'll stop. Always, 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 always send a follow-up. Email or letter, okay, depending on what their corporate culture is. After every networking meeting, after every interview. And this is how I help somebody to compose the after-interview cover letter. I say, Lynn, based on the conversation you had with them, what are the 3 things they most need in this position? Whatever you say, I try to be a reporter. I try to write down exactly the way you say it. Those are the 3 bullet points that are going to go on a half-page letter that say, wow, well, thank you is a nice way to begin it. Thank you for the time to learn more about your company and organization. After talking to you, I'm even more excited. Based on our conversation, I believe I can bring 3 things to this position. Bullet, 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 put the 3 things down with a sentence or 2. Thank you. If you need other information or I can answer questions, I'd be happy to do so. That's your follow-up letter. Always send one. I've asked a lot of people who hire, do you get follow-up letters from the people you interview? And some of them. Sometimes. That's the answer I sort of get. I say, do they matter? You bet. If they don't send me a follow-up letter, I assume they're not interested. Or I'm not interested anyway. If they're going to represent me that way, go out and talk to somebody, and I even send a thing back and say, hey, thank you for the time or whatever. So again, kind of simple. Explaining employment gaps. There are 3 places, a couple ways that you can deal with employment gaps. First of all, you can deal with them up front. If you've got an employment, I used to do some work for the World Bank and for a lot of the spouses of the people who worked in the World Bank. Most of them had masters and PhDs, and that's what the spouses did. But they all had these big employment gap things, all right? So the 3 places that you can touch on it are in the cover letter, sometimes. I'm not saying where to put it, but you could mention it in a cover letter. That the gap, or and I might not call it that, the period in 1972 to 1975, and then what you need is a sentence or 2 about what you were doing. That's the parts of what you were doing that are going to be favorable to what they're doing. You know, researching, learning new things, going to school, taking a course, working with a volunteer group, raising my family, something, but just not a blank, but showing that you're busy and probably improving your mind and that sort of thing, and maybe helping other people as well. And the summary statement up at the top is another place that sometimes we can put something in. Previously or during trips to where you traveled or that sort of thing. But what I'm suggesting is there are sometimes ways to put in what you did during the gap, so that at least it's included in there. And if it comes up in the interview, you ought to be able to talk positively about what you did during that period of time. And I decided, I think is a good term to use sometimes, okay? I decided I left that organization, I decided it wasn't the right fit at that time and for what I needed to do, and for the next year I did this and this and this, and then I decided I wanted to get back into the whatever field you wound up getting back into, and so I did what I needed to do to get in. But the idea, so in other words, not, oh yeah, that period of time, oh, let me tell you about that, it was terrible, you know. No, you gotta cover it with what you can, be truthful, okay, on everything. I think that was it there. Was there any other? I hope I gave you something you can use. What you're doing by being here on Monday morning, mentally, physically, and socially. Loads of research on those. Believe me, as somebody with a memory problem who thought he had Alzheimer's, I've learned an awful lot about the value of mental, physical, and social activity and interaction. They're critical, and yes, they do help the brain. They improve it a lot, and there's a lot of research on this too. Thank you very much. It was very good.